Hi, this is Marina from Frocks and Frolics, and we're going to make some more doll clothes today. Before we start, I want to just say a few things, although it's so simple to sew, but just so you know what awaits you, we are going to bind the edge here with bias binding. You could also serge it and just turn it in. That's the other option, and I did that with a Connie top, so if you want to do that, just watch that video so you know how to do that. We have got a little yoke here that's different to the Connie top, and in the yoke we have the straps. So there is a certain method for this, of course, and a sequence that you have to go by to get this together. So I think this will be really useful for you if you like these tops, not just for dolls, if you make them for girls. And it doesn't have to be my pattern. I think you can learn a lot about sequencing of how this all goes together, and I hope you learn a lot and enjoy it. Anyway, so let's get started. I have cut everything out already, so let's look at the pieces we need to make this lovely top. For this top, I've used actually the Michael Miller Rosalinda collection, and the fabric is called Cursive. So that's what I use for the flutter sleeve with a bit of bias binding. And again, I'm using this lovely pattern for the strap as well. Now, the upper front here is again that Rosalinda collection, and it goes together with the lower front like that. And then we are going to sandwich in between the straps, right? So if you take the strap, you will see that one side is slightly more shaped as well, and that goes into the front because the upper front has a slight curve on it. You can see that here. So that's where the slant sits on. Right, so you can see it here, and then you've got the flutter sleeve in there. You can of course leave the flutter sleeve off and just use the strap as well. That's possible, right? But I think the flutter sleeves are gorgeous, so I wouldn't leave those out. And then on your pattern, you've got markings to where your strap starts and ends. So if you just mark one thing, either where it starts or where it ends, and the center fronts, and then you're good really. Now the lining goes on, and it has the same size as, of course, when the upper and lower front are sewn together. And as lining, I use the same fabric as the upper front, right? So you can use anything for lining as long as it's quite lightweight. Here you can see again at the front has this slight tip to it. So what you might want to do now is to just mark that with a little notch so that you don't get confused. That said, if you get it wrong by accident, I don't think it matters a whole lot for a doll item. But yeah, let's practice this properly. And then we have got the back, and again the back is made in a beautiful red linen. The back is really simple. All we're going to do here is fold it over and sew it to, and make sure that the seam then sits on the center, and that way the elastic will be inserted really easily. That's why we do that. The first thing to do is to prepare the back and to pin your bias binding to the flutter sleeves. And then the flutter sleeves, all I'm going to do is put one pin at the top. And you know that bias binding has a slimmer edge and a wider edge, and the wider edge needs to sit underneath, of course, so when we top stitching this, it will definitely catch. And we leave a little bit hanging over the edge so we have something to hold on to when it's under the sewing machine. So 1 centimeter seam allowance, off you go. And blended in is the combo. That's the Betsy skirt with the tilly top. You can get them separately as well, but of course it's way cheaper if you get the combo. And then we're going to iron the seam apart just with the tip of your iron and turn it. And then it's very important that your seam sits in the center like that. And then I can put a safety pin to my 2 centimeter wide elastic and pull it through. Now elastic sometimes stretches a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. So I'm saying to you, use 12 centimeters. But if you find actually that's really tight and, you know, because your elastic has not that much stretch, you can always add a centimeter to that. And then I'm going to secure this on both sides with a pin. And then we could also top stitch on either side. You don't have to do that, but I think it's really nice. So that's what I'm going to do in this case. Just sew down on the side here, not quite a centimeter. I will do foot width, on both sides, because our seam for the sides, our side seam, is going to be 1 centimeter, and we don't want the stitch to show. And then I'm holding on for dear life here and stretch it out, and then I'm going to top stitch it on either side, and the distance to the edge is 1 centimeter. That's 5/8 of an inch. And I know I've said this wrong because I'm so bad with inches. I'm a metric girl and I said 3/8 of an inch. No, that's not a centimeter. I am so sorry, everyone that I've confused in the last, I think it might be the last video. And there we go. So I've done that now, and my back is finished. I can put that to the side. And now we're going to do the flutter sleeve. So stitch close to the edge, stitch length 3, then push the flutter right into that forward line, and then hold it with my finger again instead of pinning it. I think pinning is really harsh and this takes too long. And blend it in. You can see the Tilly sleeve that is modeled by the lovely Lily, and the top was made by her mum Emily, and Emily is one of our testers and she did a cracking job here. I think that top is absolutely stunning. She's put lace on the lower front, which I think is really nice. So she used the combinations of fabrics, slightly different to me, and she's wearing it here with a scarlet skirt, which is of course the freebie of the collection. And then you want to use the straight side to put your gather threads in, and we put 1 stitch line close to the edge and 1 foot width next to it, and it needs to be the largest stitch available on your sewing machine so that we can then pull the gather threads to fit the strap perfectly. I've done that here. It's really nothing to it. Let's have a closer look here at which side actually goes to the front and which goes to the back. So what you can see here on the left is the front part, which runs right to the edge, and on the back side the binding is folded around, and we're leaving that 1 centimeter seam allowance standing. That's really important to get right. So make sure that the notch on the front for the flutter and the notch on the front for the strap are on the same side. That's all. Otherwise it's really, really simple. And then we stitch through the 2 gather stitch lines that we've done all the way to the end, and you can arrange those gathers with a pin as you go, and that's going to be really nice. Now when you watch the girls courses, because I'm sure some of you have both or will get it because it really is gorgeous, I'm just folding over the end bits and just sewing them together. That's also an option, but here what we're going to do is we're going to fold over my strap, right sides facing, and 1 seam allowance is into the strap and then the other one is left standing. And that way it's going to be really, really neat at the end. And then we're just going to sew across those ends. Make sure that you've got a pair, of course. And I haven't got quite a centimeter seam allowance here, not that that's really important, because it's just the end. You know, these few millimeters sometimes don't really mean a thing. So know where you can cut corners or can leave stuff and where you can't. So we're sewing those together now. And blended in here is now the Connie top, which is slightly different. It's got a lovely little ruffle at the hem, which I really like, and an insert, so that's made a little bit different. So now we're going to turn our strap. There we go, lift out the corner, real nice. And then we're just going to turn this now, and we're going to pin the seam allowance to the seam. What I would say is iron this as well once you've turned it in, because when we're pulling stuff through, pins can really damage the fabric, and we're doing that at a later stage. So I'm going to have to remove the pins again. There we go, we've got a pair and we are ready to put them onto the upper front of my crop top, and you can see the markings here. So in my case, if it's not marked, you can do it like this. You know, you just mark it with your finger and then you move your flutter sleeve right to that point. See there, do it again, move it right to that point. But in an ideal world, you know, where you have marked everything as I told you, you don't have to do that. It'll be marked and you don't need the pattern piece at all. The last step here now is to check that these are put on exactly the same on both sides. So fold it in half, check that they are, and in this case they are, look, perfect. Now we can put the lower front onto the upper front with the right sides facing. I marry up my center front notches first. And then I'm just going to put a pin on the left side and a pin on the right side, and then I'm going to sew together and blend it in here. You can see the back, it's the same for the Connie top and the Tilly top, and it looks so pretty. So sew this together, 1 centimeter seam allowance. And now I'm just going to show you a few more things from the doll collection here. Those are the Audrey pants. They're really cute capris, and you can also get them for your girl. And then the top as a jersey top. When I come to the end of the collection, I'm going to put a bundle together for you with t-shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve, all manner of things, and leggings, because they are really useful for dolls. But for now, I'm just mirroring my beautiful vintage collection with the doll's clothes and the rest of my collections as well. And then we're going to go on to extra accessories for the doll, which are actually just doll specific. And then I top stitch that with a stitch length of 3. For the girls' tops, I use 3.5, but I kind of figured for dolls, we'll keep it a little bit smaller. Now you want to move the straps out of the way, because the next step is to put the lining on, and we're doing the armhole and the neckline only here. Okay, so we're going to pin this with just a few pins or even no pins. I mean, the distances are so small for doll clothes, you can get away with no pins at all once you know what you're doing anyway. And now we're going to sew around there. Seam allowance is, as always, 1 centimeter. When you turn, you always have to have the needle in the fabric, and so get to the other end and same again, needle in the fabric, lift the presser foot, turn and go down the other end. And I think it's really nice to learn a lot of tricks and tips and sewing skills with doll clothes, because it doesn't really matter if it's not 100% perfect. And blended in, you have more from the doll collection. Again, this is now the Isabella dress, which I think is super cute. And we're going to fold over our seam allowances and turn them. It's much nicer than cutting across it. Gives you a much nicer finish. And then you could top stitch this now. I've just pressed it and I'm top stitching it a little later. So now comes the point I was talking about earlier. We're going to put the right sides of the lower end of the lining and the lower end of the lower front together, and we're going to pin it and stitch it. And of course your flutter sleeves stick out either side, so if the pins are in, when you pull it out, they might damage, graze the fabric, and we don't really want that. So that's why I took the pins back out and need to put them back in afterwards. There we go. And now I'm going to sew that from one end to the other. I tried it first with the turning gap, but people just ignore that turning gap. Don't be confused there. We're sewing it shut all the way. And then we're turning it. And this, you can see how tight this is. So if you have very light fabric, for example, or delicate fabric, and you grazed it with a pin, that would not be nice. For the girls' top, you could leave it in because you have a greater distance, but for the doll's top, I found it a bit tight. Now you move out the edges, give that a jolly good press, and put the pins back in if you took them out. And you can see that I'm adjusting it again, so I would just suggest iron it. So all you have to do is just put the pins back in. There we go, all done. And blend it in now. Here on the right, you've got the Virginia blouse and the Maisie shorts. They are really cute as well. Now we're going to top stitch this. And we're sewing this with a stitch length 3 again. And make sure that your needle is down when you're turning. And I really do hope that you enjoy the store collection the way I do. I really like it. I'm using up all my rest. It's really quick to sew. And it's a really great way to see how you can sew things possibly slightly different, but get the same results, and how to get to those really great results as well. And I'm going to top stitch the lower edge as well, and then I'm going to give it a good press. And the next step, after I've cleaned it all up nicely, is to serge the sides, so they're done. And we're also going to serge the sides of the back, of course. And now I'm going to place this onto the front so that the strap sits right on the corner. So if you fold it over, you'll see that it sits right on that corner bit there, and put a pin in there. And now we're going to stitch around the strap, and number one, it'll secure the strap and it'll also secure it to the front piece. And you can see here that I lock in my stitches, and if you've made the girl's top and in the ebook I say, well, pull the threads through, don't secure it, and stitch them on by hand, because I do think that that's nicer. But then again, you have to ask yourself the question, is it really necessary for doors closed? So and I don't think it really is, unless you really want them to be super duper. And I know that some of you, they sew like whole collections and then they give that as a gift at Christmas, which is going to come around sooner than you think. So you can make like a few every weekend, and if you're sewing for your granddaughter, you'll have like a really fantastic present if you make all of these. They are so cute and she'll love it. Anyway, now we're going to put the side seams together, and you can see I've also serged the sides of my back. And in this example, you see that the hem of the front was clean, and we have got the side seams not so tidy because we're just sewing them together and they're serged. In the Connie top, I'm showing you the opposite to that, where we have the side seam really tidy and we have the hem left open, and that's serged and turned up. So how you want to work this is up to you. I think I would just try both methods so that you get a feel for how it all works, and then see what you want to do, right? And there are more methods than that, so maybe one day we'll sew it again with a different method. Now we're just top stitching the seam of the back into the front. Just give it a good top stitch here, stitch length 3 again, so that it can't go anywhere. I also tuck in my overlocking under, so that can't go anywhere. All I need to do now is put my buttonholes in. Now I will have to say that everyone that purchases the course will also get access to the Connie top how to put in a buttonhole video, and that's really in depth. What I will say here is that you put your button into your buttonhole foot at the back. That will determine how long the buttonhole is. Then you put it under the sewing machine, bearing in mind that the stitches go backwards on you on most of these electronic machines, and the sensor needs to be pulled down. Now this sensor, if there's any fabric underneath it and it touches it, it will stop sewing immediately. If you've had that experience, it really isn't fun. So having the flutter on the right hand side is what you really need to do. But if you need this in more detail, then once you've purchased the pattern, you get that if you want to put in a buttonhole. Now in my case, I have done it. You don't necessarily need to do it. You could just sew those on by hand or by sewing machine. I cut open my buttonhole, and then I'm going to put my button on, and well, it just kind of folds over and goes straight down, and that's about it really. One thing I will say while we're at it is that you can make this top into a beautiful little blouse or even into a dress. And I want to show you here one that Rabia Atika's made for a daughter. She's absolutely gorgeous, and it's very simple to do. We will do a hack for it this summer. But all you would have to do is actually extend the back, because that's gathered, so that gives you that. And in the front, you add a front piece. So it's very, very simple to do, and it looks absolutely stunning.
So there's a lot you can do with this pattern for your girl and for the doll. So really play around with it. And then most importantly, let me know what you've come up with, how you like it, comment in the YouTube channel. And if you like what you see, then please share this video as well. And that's it basically. We have finished our wonderful, beautiful little Tilly top for your doll.
And if you want to get either the combo for your girl or for your doll, you can do that at frocksandfrolics.com, either with the vintage collection or the doll collection. And I hope to see you soon again for the next project in our doll collection.